Welcome to the Golf for Beginners podcast. In today's episode, we have Richard Lancaster back in the studio. If you heard our last episode, you will have met him before, but he's back in the studio, and today he's going to talk about feel versus real. And this has very much to do with if you're trying to develop your golf swing, you will need to know the difference between feel versus real. And he's going to educate us about that today.
Welcome to the Golf for Beginners podcast, your essential guide to mastering golf fundamentals. Whether you're a beginner golfer or a seasoned player looking to refine the basics, join us as we teach you everything about the fundamentals of swing technique, course management, equipment, rules, and how to practice. Today's host is none other than the award-winning PGA golf instructor Nikolaj Setti Engström, CEO of the biggest golf teaching business in Denmark and founder of Golf for Beginners Academy.
So today we have a super interesting topic, or I think it's super interesting and actually really important for all golfers that want to develop their golf swing. So we're going to talk about what we call feel versus real. So what you are feeling and what you're actually doing in your golf swing. And this is a super important topic. So maybe we can start off. Can you tell about how you have experienced this on your own?
Yes.
Because I know you've been working a lot on your swing for a lot of years. And how has this been a part of your golfing journey, the feel versus real? What are you actually doing compared to what you're feeling you're doing?
Yes. It is an extremely important part in improving something because many times it's coming down basically physiologically to the neurological pathways, right? Mm-hmm. If you just look on how the brain works, right? If you want to learn something, we all know that, muscle memory, even though the names are just muscles, it's nothing in the muscles, everything happens in the brain. Of course, it happens in the brain, right? And the memory is quite literally of how strong pathway is between one part of the brain and the other part of the brain, right? Mm-hmm. And the bigger highway you have, the more automatic the movement becomes, right? So it's all coming down to basically, like when you're trying to exercise, you gotta send a signal that you want, that this is what it is now is not sufficient, right? As in, if you're working out, you need to lift heavy weights, you send your brain a signal, you're not strong enough, build more muscles. This is the same thing. We need to send strong enough signal to give your brain a message. We need to build bigger pathways. We need to, this small little road is not sufficient, we need to build a highway. So in order to do that, we of course need to over-exaggerate certain movements, right? Because then that's quite literally designed in order to send strong enough signal, and over a repeated amount of time, it will become an automatic thing, right? That's where drills come in handy, because drills are quite literally designed to do that. They are over-exaggeration of certain movement, right? Because everything in a swing is, if you think about it, it's a spectrum, right? It's not just like one way to do it, right? It's a certain spectrum. Right, and ideally, of course, me as a swing coach, I would like you to be in the middle of the spectrum because that gives you biggest margins for error. Because we are humans, we are not machines, we're gonna make errors. If you find yourself on the side of the spectrum on a lesson, then of course I'll ask you to do a certain drill that will force you to the other side of the spectrum, right? And then sooner or later we're gonna balance it out and find it in the middle. And of course, for the practice, the reason that we are doing these drills is that they are separated from the actual swing, because the drill is not a swing, right? So then it's easier to practice that, because drill is a drill and a swing is a swing, and in a drill we can over-exaggerate it, and sooner or later, again in a continuous lesson possibly, we can stabilize it and find it in the middle. But it's all important just sending a strong enough signal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super interesting on that one. So let's say you have a lesson, and let's say you're teaching somebody, and you talk about that the head needs to stay in the same position, so it doesn't move around all over the place. What if the guy or the girl tells you that the head is actually staying in the they feel like the head is staying in the same position? What would you then do?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I need to find out which way the head is actually moving. Right? If it's moving at all, then of course I'm going to find that I'll just say that it's moving towards the trailing side, right? One of the classic examples. So I'll of course need them to feel that they are going to move more towards the leading side, again towards the target. So that's the left side for a right-handed golfer. So a perfectly good drill for that would be a putting a golf club on their leading side of the head, and the quest or their goal or their objective is to push against the club on the way up. That way they are over-exaggerating the movement, right? Mm-hmm. Or me on the other side, I can also put my hand on their head, mm-hmm. which is going to work as a feedback solution, right? So I'm not going to necessarily hold them in a place because I don't want to work as a training wheels there, right? Like, a braces around something. I want their own body, their own brain to send the strong enough signal. So then I'm working there as a feedback. So if they're moving their head, they are themselves pushing against my hand, and they're getting the instant feedback that they are moving somewhere. So, for example, like with the club, they will force themselves, move to the other side, and then when they do it the right way, again, important part in here is me giving them the feedback. So the one time they do it exactly right, they don't over-exaggerate it way too much. That's where I will tell them, now you did it perfect. Because again, human brain takes all of that as a feedback, right? Even though many times we don't realize it, we feel like, okay, coach said that, doesn't mean it was important, but it was, right? Mm-hmm. If you did it right and you get an instant feedback that, it was right, then that's definitely going to help in the long run.
Nice. I think you said a lot of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important thing you said was the feedback. I think feedback is extremely important because we as coaches, we can give the feedback. And we usually have all kind of technical devices. We have TrackMans. We usually use video as well to give the feedback to the player. Of course, we ourselves, our eyes are also a feedback tool. Mm-hmm. But so what if the player, let's say you have a player and you talked about with the player keeping this head in the same position. Yep. You gave the feel that you need to, hit mm-hmm. this club on the left side, the lead side, which is an over-exaggeration. Mm-hmm. How can the player actually get some feedback on their own when they're on the range?
Well, of course, as you touched upon it, video and a TrackMan, those things are absolutely they are super important. Of course, I would always separate in three different stages. In this case, we have the TrackMan, video, and then that personal feel. So if you have access to a TrackMan, again on the lesson, if it's necessary for the lesson, TrackMan nowadays can measure everything. So there will usually be a metric that can be attached to it. So again, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to explain the number. You're going to understand how to move the number one way or the other. And then if you have a TrackMan accessible to yourself, which again, nowadays it's possible, you can rent sim rooms, etc. Mm-hmm. Then you can look on that. Second thing, you can video yourself, mm-hmm. right? Again, that's the instant feedback, or not actually instant feedback. It's the feedback you need. You see if you move the head. And if you, let's just say you try to over-exaggerate it, then you see it on a video, it wasn't enough, then you try to do it even more, right? And then you're just basically calibrating yourself, right? But this feel part, that's super important there, because video and TrackMan, they are all after the swing. We need something that's actually in the swing, which is always necessary for the lesson to give you something like that. So you can actually have that feel when you're trying to over-exaggerate it, right? And then you're just basically trying to find, like on a slider, how much, right? And find the middle. Right? And that's you have to do that basically on your own, right? That's just that practice on your own when you keep on doing it, having that feedback, because that just takes time. That's just the muscle memory. That's just the development of the neural pathways. While I'm touching upon it about those neural pathways, a little bit turning back on that one, the beautiful part of the neural pathways is that it really doesn't take that long. Like building muscles can take long because you actually need physical material to build the muscles, and as in protein and minerals and whatnot. But neural pathways, they require some material, but it's in orders of magnitude less than actually building muscles. So these things they can take 1 or 2 weeks, as quickly as that, right? But it's just all about sending strong enough signal when it comes down.
Yeah, totally agree. I love the part with the calibrating using. I think of course TrackMan is super nice, but the video part is, I think that's really easy for people because they have the phone in their pockets or in the golf bag, and then it's just take it out, put it in front of you or somewhere else, and then you take the video, you do the over-exaggerated feel, then you get your feedback because there's no coach around, so you get the feedback from your video. Your coach has told you, okay, the head needs to stay in the same position. You look at the video, you see, holy moly, the head is still moving to the side. Jesus Christ. Then you know, okay, I need to over-exaggerate this feel that I got from the coach even more. And then you're calibrating. Yeah. So then you're basically teaching yourself. Of course, you have clues from the coach what you need to do and where you need to be, but you're kind of teaching yourself with the feedback tool. And I think that's one of the most important things when developing the golf swing, that you get the feedback all the time. Instead of, let's say you do a lesson every second week, so then you get some things to work on, then you go on the range, you go 5-6 times, and then you think you're doing it right, and then the next time the coach videotapes you, and then you see, holy moly, the head is still moving. I just wasted 5 hours of my life practicing on something that I thought was right. My feel was that I'm doing it right, but you could have just picked up your phone, videotaped it take literally 30 seconds, and then you would have saved those 5 hours of your life. So I think that's a really, really good point. 100%. Okay, super cool. So you talked about these brain pathways. From my experience, the longer you play golf, the more difficult it is to actually change something in a golf swing. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. Those pathways are already there. Now we have to build a different ones. We have to break those highways away and find a different way around them. That's not easy. That takes time and dedication. But yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So the longer you play golf, the more difficult it will usually be to change the golf swing. That's a fact. So that's also why, if you're new to the game of golf, investing in some help early on in your golfing journey is really worth it. It's gonna save you a bunch of time and a bunch of frustrations. Because if you play golf for 20 years and you decide to do something, do a swing change, it's gonna be more difficult, even though you are a better golfer than the beginner, because of your brain pathways there are bigger or whatever you say. And that's also why I think that the feel versus real, usually the feel needs to be even more exaggerated the longer time you play it. Do you see the same in your lessons?
100%. And also, and that's an important part, I wanted to touch upon it before, don't take feedback from the contact or from the shot itself when you're working on something. Right? We talked with Nikolai about the video and videoing yourself. You might actually do it right in that moment. Your head stays stable, but something else broke apart for some kind of a completely different reason, and you hit a bad shot, and you think you did it wrong because maybe the head must have moved. But then that's why you have to have that feedback from the video, because you saw it wasn't actually, you did the right thing there, right? And you gotta take one step at a time. We cannot just skip at the end of the book, right? We have to take chapter 1, chapter 2, etc. until we get to the end of the book. And yes, for someone who's been playing for a long time, yes, that's going to take some longer time, but it's all worth it, right? And also, as Nikolai mentioned before, not only it's just going to save time, it's also going to save money in the long run. Because if you're going to invest in the lessons when you start, you can make the changes that some people then need maybe 3 or 4 lessons to apply that, right? So down the line, again, it's going to save time, it's going to save money, and you're also going to have much more better time on a golf course, because of course, losing tons of balls when you're playing, hitting so many bad shots, it's just not as fun as it could be when we are relatively decent, right? And then when you get it really good, then it becomes bad again. It becomes frustrating again. So it's definitely a good idea to start with something like that, so we can get the right way around. Because again, there's just so many ways how to do it wrong, and I would say both beautiful and frustrating part of golf is that you can play yourself down to a pretty decent handicap by doing completely wrong things. Right? That is the reason why average handicap is 18. Right? Average golfer is handicap 18 because they never took lessons. They play themselves down to something like that. They have maybe a decent short game, which is down the line a lot about feel, a lot about hitting those 10,000 shots. Getting the feel for that. But then they bottom out or they plateaued. Right? They go take a lesson. And the pro tells them, we gotta start over almost, right? We gotta have to rebuild everything out, and then you try it, and it doesn't work. It makes it worse, so you give up on lessons, and then it's forever bogey golf, right? So everything takes time and dedication, and it's never smooth sailing. And like with everything in life, right? If you want to take 3 steps forward, we need to take 2 steps back. Just with golf, is many times 21 steps backwards, so we can take 22 steps forward. But the rewards are also bigger and better. Right?
Super cool. So you mentioned this with how do you evaluate the shot? That usually when you're working on the swing, a lot of people they think the feedback they need is how they hit the golf ball. So if they hit a shot, maybe they did the right movement that you were working on, but they hit the ball really badly. And then the feedback was, this was not right. I did something wrong. And now we're off to a wrong track.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you guys need to trust the coach and say, okay, we do one step at a time.
Exactly.
And I love the book thing. Like there's chapters, and you don't start at chapters 7 and 10. You start at chapter 1, and then you work on that until it's fixed, and then you move on to the next one. You can't just jump a bunch of chapters. Exactly. One of my clients, I actually used that analogy, and he always he came to a lesson, and then I videoed him, and then he was like, "What chapter are we at today?" And I was like, "Last time we actually made it to chapter 7. We're back to chapter 4 today. I'm so sorry. We forgot about the lead arm, and the head is also moving around. So we got to take a few chapters back."
Yeah. But I appreciate your integrity in that, because of course you would always want to say like, no, it's getting better because you're working with me, so it's getting better. No. But integrity, important part, right? Like, be honest, because if they didn't practice, or maybe they did practice and then something happened, you never know, right? So
he came to me and he was like, I went on a travel for 1 month and I haven't played golf. So what chapter we're at now? Yeah. I was like, sorry guy, we are a few chapters behind compared to last time. Super cool, Richard. This was a super fun talk. I hope you enjoyed it.
100%, as always, pleasure.
Nice, thank you so much for coming in today. I really enjoyed it, and we're gonna do some more episodes with you.
Thank you.
It's gonna be fun. Thank you so much.
I'm looking forward to coming back. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Golf for Beginners podcast. We hope you found valuable tips and inspiration to enhance your golf journey. Remember, whether you're a novice or a seasoned player, there's always room for improvement. For more in-depth resources, tutorials, and a supportive community, head over to our website at golfforbeginners.academy. There, you'll find a wealth of information to elevate your game. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with your fellow golf enthusiasts. Until next time, keep practicing, keep learning, and enjoy this lovely game.